Hi there, I'm Tom. Welcome back to Tom's Grinder Lab. This short video is on the updates made to the original DF64V, which I'm calling the DF64V version 2. Quick interruption because I forgot. Big shout out, thank you to Frank at Coffee Tech, who's the Australian importer and distributor for the DF or Turin range of grinders. Here in Australia, you can get them from Alternative Brewing, Casa Espresso, Talk Coffee, both in Melbourne, and various other resellers. But a big thanks to Frank for sending this unit to me for a review. It will be going back to Frank, but I really appreciate him being thoughtful enough to send it to me so that we can update the features on the DF64V V2. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, and if you're wanting a thorough understanding of how good a grinder the DF64V is, it's still my recommendation for the best bang for bucks grinder. And if you have a look on my channel, you'll see the original review. Just search Tom Poland or Tom's Grinder Lab DF64V, and you'll see the original one. If I remember, I'll even pin it underneath the video to make it easy for you. Once you've seen that, if you want to know about the updates, this is the video you should come and see. And I'm calling this the version 2, not the Gen 2, because it's a little bit confusing otherwise. The original DF64, which started all this, did have a Gen 2 update. And in terms of how it's described, I think the Generation 2, because they are like a generation apart, is an apt description. The original DF64, which kind of brought single dose grinding in an affordable format to thousands of households around the world, was upgraded in the Gen 2, and it's almost a completely different grinder. I mean, it looks the same, but it's, instead of the vinyl wrap, it's got powder coating, it's got plasma generator or anti-static generator. It's got a different dial. It's components for the collar, for the thread. Again, there is a review on the DF64 Gen 2 on my channel. You can have a look at it. It's a terrific grinder. But that was a generation, a giant leap, so many different features. This one is not. This one is just a few features, kind of like a new grill on the car or a new seat on the car, the upgraded model for the next year, if you like. So it's nothing that's going to convince me that I should trade in my original DF64V for the DF64V V2. But there are small worthwhile changes. What are those changes? Very simply, we've now got a plasma generator, which lowers retention. There's a one-piece chute instead of two-piece chute. Lower RPM goes from 600 to 800, which you might think is a backward step, but it's probably not. And there's a slow bean feeder. Now, these last two changes, I think, are probably in response to quite a few forum complaints that the DF64V was stalling with, say, very light roasts at the lowest possible RPM. So the introduction of bumping up from 600 to 800 RPM as the minimum is going to eliminate those complaints, although it could be argued you could just change it, on the dial to 800 if you've got the original one, which is what I would do. And the slow bean feeder means that the motor is not under load, the same as if you're dumping it in. Now, I don't think these changes are enough for someone who, like me, who owns the original DF64V to say, oh, I'm going to sell that and I'm going to buy a DF64V V2. All these Vs are getting confusing. But I think they are worthwhile improvements on behalf of DF or Turin, the manufacturers, in terms of a newer model or a newer edition, as I said, a bit like a new grill on a car. So let's turn the page, as it were, and have a look at what these changes look like visually. On the left, you'll see the V2. That's the DF64V V2. I'll just call it the V2. And the V1 here, which is the original, and you'll note 600 RPM versus the lower setting on the newer version, which is 800 RPM. That's one change I mentioned. Another change is that the V2 comes with a one-piece magnetic chute, whereas the V1 comes with two pieces. Which one I prefer, I don't really care. I quite like the two-piece actually, because you can just take the top one off, give it a little brush if you wanted to. Whereas with the new one, you have to stick the brush in or tap it. This is the slow bean feeder, which can, I believe, be fitted retrospectively to the V1. I'm not really going to bother to do that because I can just pour the beans in slower if I want to. Let's have a look in the Grinder Lab. I put a video together for you to show the retention and the effects of the plasma generator. So let me step out of the way here and have a look at what goes on in the Grinder Lab. So I'm showing you the magnetic chutes there, one piece versus two piece. Just to mess with your brain, I've got the version 1 on the right hand side. Putting beans in at the same time. grinding in real time. Now, I just want to point out to you that the V2, and it's hard to see, but there's still a small stream of grounds coming out of there. I pull my finger away when that's finished, just so you know how long it went on for. But it is quite significant. I don't know if it's just the particular unit I have. I use bellows on both of these, but not RDT. I pretty much stopped using RDT on pretty much every grinder, although I would say the original probably still warrants use. And I'm just going to get the potential exchange grinds out. These are the grinds that might come through in the next grind if I didn't do this, just to show you the difference between the two. Now this is, remember this one here is the V2, and there would not even be 0.1 gram in there. It's really quite remarkable. Remember, no RDT, but I have used the bellows. And this one is the V1. And I would not normally do this after each grind. I'm just doing it to show you. But again, very, very little. Certainly a lot more than V2. So the anti-plasma generator is doing a good job there. But really nothing I'd write home about. So there you have it. That's the latest and greatest from Turin or DF grinders. If you don't currently have a DF64V grinder, you will benefit from the improvements from making sure you get a V2 versus a V1. If you have a V1, in my opinion, it's not worth doing the upgrade for. If you are keen on slow feeding the beans, you can just pour them in a bit slower. You can still use RDT if that little 0.2 of a gram is worrying you, is bothering you. But really, with vigorous use of the bellows, you don't need to use RDT, in my view. If you're really hyper pedantic, then you probably want to use RDT and the bellows, or if you use RDT, you could probably not use the bellows, but it's your choice. Me, I just old-fashioned dump the beans in, have a hot start, dump the beans in, give it a good tap with the bellows, and I think I'm pretty good to go. And I'm certainly sure that any blind taste testing between whatever method you choose to use, whether it's bellows, RDT, or both, or neither, I think you'll find any difference in the cup if you were blind taste testing. So there you go. Upgrades from Turin or DF grinders are worthwhile if you're in the market to buy one. Hope that helps. And always remember, if you pop over to Tom's Grinder Lab, you can download the Espresso Optimization Guide. It's a good little checklist. And the reason it's not just 24 pages of ideas, you actually look at what's happening with your espresso and you might say, well, it's a little bit sour, or I want some more body in it, or it's a bit, because it's a bit thin, or maybe I'm getting a bit bitter. So this will help you diagnose, because it goes through every issue that's conceivable to go wrong with an espresso, and there are quite a few, and it gives you the remedy of how to fix that. So that's at Tom's Grinder Lab, Espresso Optimization Guide. Hope this has been helpful if you're looking in the market for a DF64V.